Là, on arrive pas loin d'une plantation de maïs, OGM, le tout financé par le fils de Howard Buffett, le magnat de Wall Street, par Bill Gates, le milliardaire, et par Monsanto, le géant fabricant de pesticides et d'OGM.
It's September 2018. I would never have imagined that this morning in Uganda would kickstart 3 years of my journalistic career.
I think I see crops over there. I think it's maize, but not so sure.
Ah voilà, ici là. Alors, c'est marqué zone de test pour plantes génétiquement modifiées. Et juste à côté, entrée interdite.
Hello, how are you? Good morning. I'm interested in American investment in Uganda, so I just wondered if we could snap 1 or 2 pictures of the test fields here.
I think you need to see the director first. No, I've just been talking to the director.
Yeah.
He's not around.
We can come in and just visit the place.
No, for journalists, we have restrictions with journalists because we don't know what you can take, don't know what you can cover. You know what is going on in Uganda.
Yeah. It's kind of sensitive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, have a good day.
We asked for an official meeting several times before this happened.
Il y a un mec de la sécurité qui a alerté pour qu'on nous prenne en chasse. A priori, on va se faire virer dans pas longtemps. Il nous cherche.
We are nervous. If
Yes.
someone comes in
Yeah,
without clear intentions, you see, we can lose lives innocent.
Death threats for trying to film a GMO cornfield. Why is there so much hostility on the ground when a completely different tone is used on social networks? For example here, with the official communication of Buffett's son, one of the wealthy that financed the GMO cornfields in Uganda.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? I remember when I sat down last year and I was trying to explain how this project was going to work. You know, the only way you can say is we're going to bring you rain. And they look at you like, well, how are you going to do that? I see you.
Buffett promises to bring the rain. A miracle possible with new technologies and if the ancestral traditions of African agriculture are ignored. An American benefactor businessman lecturing African farmers. The scene is reminiscent of the old days of colonialism.
So the next few years, we hope that you can learn how to improve some of your planting.
If Buffett has the right to film himself on the field that he finances, why not us? Because in this genetically modified universe, words and communication are controlled, and social networks are the ideal ground for lobbying.
Imagine what it's like to live in extreme poverty. You have to think about the basics like your next meal all the time.
On Instagram, corn is presented as enriching the lives of Africans fighting famine. It's not GMO and is said to be resistant and anti-drought. In barely 10 years, the social networking site Instagram has become the new trendsetter, where even billionaires are accessible, relatable, sincere and transparent. But how transparent are they really? We decided to venture into this world of billionaires who dream of a genetically modified Africa, and we discovered that part of that dream is already a reality.
If you have enough money, you get to determine what the right path is for a set of countries as diverse as there are in Africa.
Our foundation is proud to be a part of that with our $700 million commitment.
On met en avant des buts prétendument philanthropiques, humanitaires, mais au fil du compte, on se rend compte que c'est autre chose qu'on essaie de promouvoir.
Il y a un financement dans une recherche hasardeuse. Il y a un financement dans un saut vers l'inconnu.
C'est quand même la géopolitique agricole.
Ça pourrait être très simple, quoi.
To be honest with you, right now, I would not want to say anything.
At the heart of this investigation lies the idea that private fortunes could achieve a miracle, save the world.
A phenomenon that people were calling philanthro-capitalism. And it was an idea that you can essentially marry some of the ideas of corporate growth and corporate profit-making with the goals of philanthropy. And this is problematic.
In the age of philanthropic capitalism, saving the world actually makes millions. To investigate these pro-GMO financial giants, we use the same tool they do, Instagram. We create our account and subscribe to theirs. On Instagram, there are those for genetic modification.
You think genetically modified can help Africa?
We need better tools. If you want to get there out there, be challenge the small-scale farmers to see that there are new opportunities, there are new tools that are coming in the marketplace.
Fans, opponents, and even those who are fervently against GMOs. The supporters of 100% non-modified food, who denounce the risks of GMOs on our health and the environment. Darlene Kassem, an African Instagrammer with 24,000 followers, holds a special place in this minefield of opinion. She uses her image in her fight.
Je suis Darlene Kassem. Il y a un an, j'ai créé une association environnementaliste. On était à 16 millions d'hectares en 1960 et aujourd'hui on est à moins de 2 millions d'hectares de forêt. C'est dramatique.
This Ivorian woman calls herself an eco-feminist. The convergence between ecological and feminist struggles.
La nature et la femme sont deux choses qui sont très exploitées dans notre société, mais qui ne sont pas reconnues à leur juste valeur.
As an influential force on social networks, we asked for her collaboration in our investigation. We invited her to accompany us to the scene of the crimes, to entrust her with our Instagram account, and to help unravel the threads of an ongoing plot on her continent. GMO started in the early 90s in the United States. It was the golden age of Monsanto, the powerhouse of genetically modified products. At the turn of the millennium, it spread to South America, conquering Argentina and then Brazil. At the same time, Europe was skeptical. They adopted precaution. Genetically modified crops were very limited or even prohibited. So for our philanthro-capitalists who bet everything on genetically modified crops, the African continent became an El Dorado.
c'est seulement 3% des surfaces cultivées, par exemple en Afrique, qui sont des surfaces OGM, donc à peu près 4 millions d'hectares, alors qu'on est à 60-70 millions en Amérique latine. Donc on voit bien que là, il y a vraiment un potentiel, c'est un nouvel horizon, un nouveau front.
It all began in 1997 when only one African country out of the 54 accepted GMOs, South Africa. In just 20 years, almost all of its soybeans, corn and cotton were genetically modified. Since then, the market has boomed. As if it were a revelation comparable to the arrival of running water or the internet, GMO technology is being exported throughout Africa. Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Sudan, Egypt, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast. We land in Abidjan, the economic capital of Ivory Coast. Here, a major change, the arrival of GMOs, is taking place without the people concerned being aware of it. We meet the activist Darlene Kassem.
Dans ce genre de marché, inutile de demander aux vendeurs si leur produit est sans OGM ou non. Vous connaissez les OGM?
Les OGM, je ne comprends pas ça. Quel
OGM, OGM.
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 OGM, je ne connais pas.
Merci. Bref, les OGM, les légumes et les fruits transgéniques, on ne connaît pas.
Activists know that the threat is imminent and traditional African agriculture is in danger.
Notre agriculture, c'est une agriculture moins intensive, pratiquée par des agriculteurs qui utilisent essentiellement des outils rudimentaires. Mais ce qu'il faut retenir en gros, c'est que ça reste encore une agriculture nourricière, une agriculture juste, une agriculture qui est à visage humain. Bien évidemment, cette forme, elle est menacée. L'Afrique de l'Ouest fait partie des parties qui ne sont pas encore suffisamment exploitées. Donc c'est des opportunités, c'est un espace commercial à occuper.
Before 2016, Ivory Coast was one of the anti-GMO countries. Until a group of multinationals proposed a deal to the Ivorian government. They promised to finance investments in agriculture, especially rice production, to counter famine. And in exchange, they demanded and obtained the vote of a law that would authorize research and marketing of GMOs for the first time in the country.
On était tous surpris en tant qu'agriculteurs d'apprendre que la Côte d'Ivoire venait de s'ouvrir aux OGM. C'était une grosse surprise pour nous. Ce n'est pas une loi qui a été vulgarisée. Donc on ne connaît pas le contenu de tout ce qui a été autorisé. C'est clair que la loi vient autoriser ces multinationales à exercer librement leurs activités. C'est vraiment une récompense aux multinationales. C'est quand même la géopolitique agricole.
In agricultural geopolitics, GMOs and their promoters often use an irrefutable argument that thanks to them, drought and malnutrition are no more.
You can put a gene in that prevents the plant from getting disease. And so a disease that's wiping out the crops of poor people and causing tens of thousands to starve, you can get rid of that.
Among these wealthy tycoons that promote GMOs, one man stands out, Bill Gates. The former boss of Microsoft, now a humanitarian, sees himself as the Christopher Columbus of GMOs. His flagship, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the richest NGO in the world with $50 billion in assets. Bill Gates has 6 million followers on Instagram. Every day, videos and photos are posted for fans. Sometimes of him with his rich and famous friends. In 20 years, and even more so since the COVID-19 crisis, he has become unmissable in the spheres of vaccination, health, and agriculture. So much so that he's able to promote his own solutions to the problem of third world countries. With millions of dollars, Bill Gates has decided that the cure for famine in Africa is GMOs.
The Europeans have decided they don't want to use it, most of them, which is fine. They're not facing malnutrition and starvation. If they want to pay a premium for food of a kind, it's not a huge deal. The Africans, I think, will choose to let their people have enough to eat.
Bill Gates is all-powerful. On the internet, Bill's life is told by Bill himself. Exceptions are rare. Lindsay McGoy is one of the few on the planet who has dared to investigate the Gates Foundation. But she was never allowed to interview the world's most famous philanthropist.
I think the Gates Foundation decides which media and which journalists it wishes to engage with, so they pick and choose organizations that they think will represent them in a positive light. There's no onus on it, no legal necessity for it to respond to different media inquiries or from questions from the general public.
You have to decide what's important in the world. I will look at energy, climate change, and disease eradication.
There is one word that the authorized hagiographies of St. Bill Gates never mention, and yet it is a crucial one: philanthro-capitalism.
And it was an idea that you can essentially marry some of the ideas of corporate growth and corporate profit-making with the goals of philanthropy. And this is problematic because it's leading people to think that tech billionaires will somehow save us, when actually they won't, they aren't, and some of their practices actually compound the very problems of environmental degradation.
Bill Gates has found a new environmental emergency: eradicating the diseases that ravage African cassava, which he himself calls the most interesting vegetable in the world. By what miracle? The miracle of technology, as always.
Ici, c'est l'hôpital des plantes.
C'est des laboratoires hyper surveillés et sécurisés. Je pense qu'on n'a pas vraiment accès pour savoir vraiment ce qui s'y trame.
Do you have any guidelines that would forbid any GM programs to be funded?
Ce qui m'étonne, c'est que ce soit un projet dans lequel l'Union européenne soit impliquée.
Abidjan, the world capital of Attiéké. Semolina obtained by grating cassava. It can be found on every plate.
L'attiéké, c'est simple, c'est pas cher et c'est fait à base de manioc. Pendant l'épidémie de Covid, en Europe, vous faisiez des réserves de pâtes. Eh bien, nous, ici, on faisait des réserves de manioc.
Cassava, the world's most interesting vegetable. Gates paid $15 million to have it analyzed down to the last cell in a laboratory near Abidjan. During our investigation, this research center caught our attention as it remains rather vague about the content of their work.
Bonjour tout le monde. Faites l'extraction de quoi? ADN, feuille de manioc. C'est quel échantillon ça?
L'échantillon de
Ici, c'est le laboratoire de virologie de WAVE, West African Virus Epidemiology. Ce laboratoire a été ouvert en 2015 avec des fonds de la Fondation Bill et Melinda Gates.
This program, named WAVE, of course has an Instagram account that's well maintained. We can see its generous donor here, and his scientists at work collaborating between the fields of 10 African countries in search of a remedy that will save cassava from any threat, parasite, drought or virus.
Ici, c'est l'hôpital des plantes. À partir d'une cellule qu'on ne voit pas à l'œil nu, on peut générer une plante tout entière, identique à la plante d'origine, mais sans pathogène.
To save cassava, what does Dr. Gates have his teams do?
Il faut se préparer pour l'avenir. Il y a des technologies qui sont développées dans les laboratoires très avancés. Il faut que nous puissions les transférer ici.
Professor Peter knows the world of genetically modified plants very well. His CV is impressive. He studied in Donald Danforth Plant Science Center, an American research center. The Danforth Center is based in St. Louis, Missouri, precisely in front of the historical headquarters of Monsanto, which has now merged with the laboratory.
J'ai fini ma thèse là-bas et je gardais toujours les attaches avec le Donald Danforth Plant Science Center.
Justement, ce centre, il est souvent critiqué parce qu'il est financé par Monsanto, que du coup, c'est un centre qui promeut les OGM et la recherche.
Monsanto était juste la rue d'en face. Et vous savez, entre chercheurs, on aime bien discuter, communiquer, comprendre ce qui se passe. Donc, nous avions des collaborations vraiment scientifiques. Donc, vraiment, ce financement de Danforth par Monsanto, bon, je ne m'y connais pas. Bon, je ne pourrais pas vraiment parler de ce que je ne sais pas.
We traced the funding that he claims to not know anything about. A study co-authored by Dr. Peter himself and a Bayer Monsanto employee. In 2004, the two researchers wrote that they had manipulated a component of a cassava gene to make it more resistant to pests. Their technique? Gene silencing.
Est-ce que vous êtes en train de préparer l'arrivée d'un manioc OGM en Afrique de l'Ouest?
Je réponds non, qu'il n'y a pas d'OGM ici. Je serai pour les plantes transgéniques à condition que les conditions soient réunies et qu'il y ait vraiment un besoin. Actuellement, le besoin, il n'est pas là. Mais il faut être préparé. Il faut être préparé à tout.
One of the rooms in this laboratory has a rather controversial name.
Donc en fait, ça c'est la salle dont je parlais pour l'amélioration génétique. Et très très rapidement, d'ici 6 mois, tout cela sera opérationnel.
D'ici à 6 mois, dans cette salle, vous commencerez à faire du genetic improvement, de l'amélioration génétique?
Non, pas vraiment. Nous allons apprendre les techniques. C'est différent. Et nous préparer en même temps à acquérir les nouvelles technologies telles que le CRISPR, toutes ces nouvelles technologies, lorsque nous serons vraiment prêts à les recevoir.
Mentioning these new techniques makes the professor uncomfortable. CRISPR, for example, is a recent genetic manipulation technology, new generation GMOs.
Aujourd'hui, il y a 2 techniques d'édition génétique. On les appelle parfois les nouveaux OGM. La première, les ciseaux CRISPR. Les ciseaux CRISPR découpent la partie du génome qui ne fonctionne pas bien. Sauf que c'est pas comme avec les cheveux. Quand c'est coupé, ça ne repousse pas, c'est définitif. Et en plus, on ne sait pas encore quelles conséquences durables tout ça aura sur la plante. La deuxième technique, le gene silencing. Cette fois-ci, pas de coup de ciseau. Pour ne plus voir cette partie qui pose problème, on va la modifier avec de l'artificiel pour camoufler quoi.
To artificially modify the plant, it is not just a wig. It is a true internal transformation called mutagenesis.
Les OGM classiques, on parle de transgénèse parce qu'il s'agit de prendre un gène étranger pour le mettre dans un gène d'un organisme autre, ça peut être une plante ou un animal, pour que cet animal ou bien cette plante-là exprime des caractéristiques qu'il n'avait pas à l'état initial. Mais dans le cas, par exemple, des nouvelles technologies d'OGM, les modifications se font à l'intérieur de la plante. Donc, il n'y a plus de transplantation. Donc, les promoteurs des OGM disent qu'on ne peut pas parler d'OGM dans ce cas, puisqu'il n'y a pas eu de transfert de gènes extraterrestres. Mais nous disons que c'est le même principe. Il y a une décision de la Cour européenne, la Haute Cour de justice, qui est allée dans ce sens et qui a estimé que les organismes issus de la mutagénèse dirigée étaient aussi des OGM.
Court ruling, July 25th, 2018. Organisms resulting from mutagenesis techniques must be considered as falling under the concept of GMOs. Environmental pollution, unwanted mutations, accumulation of carcinogenic molecules, endocrine disruptors in plants intended for human and animal food. The European Court of Justice says no to mutagenesis, so in theory, Europe should say no to the WAVE program. Except that we discovered a surprise. Professor Peter and his team are also funded by the European Union.
Alors, il y a un moment, pendant la visite du centre de recherche, où le professeur Pita nous montre une salle. Et je crois qu'il nous parle d'un financement de l'Union européenne.
Toutes les paillasses, tout est fait, les équipements ont été commandés. Nous avons eu un partenariat avec l'Union européenne. Donc ce sont ces fonds-là qui vont nous permettre d'équiper ce laboratoire.
Alors, du coup, si on cherche dans leur projet, WAVE, financement et cofinancement, 5 millions de l'Union européenne sur 5 ans.
Ah, 5 millions d'euros.
Europe is co-financing a laboratory that plans to carry out research that the European Court of Justice considers dangerous. For weeks we tried to get an interview with Jutta Urpilainen, the commissioner in charge of the case. Her office never granted us an interview.
Hello. Did you have any news of Jutta Urpilainen? If maybe she have a spot to so that we can interview her?
I haven't heard back from the CAB.
Okay.
So I will need to come back to you on that one later.
What we discovered is that in Ivory Coast, when we went to film, they are planning to use new technique like CRISPR, like gene editing, like all the stuff. And they on the record, they actually said that they were developing those techniques thanks to the European Union support. So that's why we're calling, actually.
Okay. To be honest with you, right now I will not want to say anything just because I'm not an expert on this project.
Mm-hmm.
I think first of all we're going to try and find out on our end this, and then we will for sure get back to you with a proper reply from our side.
Yeah, but do you have any guidelines that would forbid any GM programs to be funded?
We are going to need to check this. I am not sure if there's specific guidelines on absolutely every single thing. I don't know. We will need to check. I cannot. I've just heard this now, and
yes, of course.
We'll need to check everything.
Even the NGOs that are scrutinizing every penny of funding from the European Commission don't know that the WAVE program also wants to modify the genes of cassava.
Ce qui m'étonne, c'est que ce soit un projet dans lequel l'Union européenne soit impliquée. Nous, des échanges qu'on a pu avoir avec des membres de la Commission, l'Union européenne ne souhaite pas financer le développement des OGM en Afrique. Et en tout cas, nous, on a une loi de 2014, qui est la loi pour le développement et la solidarité internationale, dans laquelle la France s'engage à ne pas financer recherche, production et commercialisation d'OGM en Afrique. Donc ça reste très, très interpellant.
The Commission finally answered our email, stating that there is no laboratory work on GMOs in Ivory Coast and that the equipment, bought thanks to the European financing, are insufficient to proceed to this advanced research on GMOs. Europe hides behind its so-called insufficient funding of 5 million euros. How about the other $15 million offered by Bill Gates to the WAVE program? This large amount of money allows GMO research to advance in Africa.
So, for example, in September 2020, a large coalition of different faith leaders across Africa wrote an open letter to the Gates Foundation asking them to rethink their very GMO-intensive investment. They were asking the Gates Foundation to consider, again, instead, promoting something which is called agroecology, which is seen as more sustainable and more in tune with the needs of local communities. And essentially, the Gates Foundation simply ignored them, simply ignored these faith leaders.
Bill Gates ignores the coalition of African leaders, along with Lindsay McCoy's demands and also ours. The Gates Foundation's choices are imposed on Africans without any counterforce powerful enough to question them. This is the heart of philanthrocapitalism, the investments of a billionaire perfectly aligned with the interests of agribusiness.
Ideologically, Mr. Gates is a firm advocate of capitalism in essence. And the question we're facing now is whether capitalism is in conflict with the governmental need to protect different populations.
The key to the Gates system is in its financial structure, how its $50 billion in assets are used.
That money is then invested in the stock market, in essence, in many different companies, and it's done so through essentially what the Gates see as something like a blind trust.
The cash that the Gates Foundation invests, for example, in Africa, comes from dividends received as a shareholder in a whole bunch of companies.
Yes, and that's how most foundation endowments work. They're dividends that come back into it's not just dividends, how the portfolio is invested, your capital is lent to those companies, in essence, in order to own shares. So these endowments own portions of different companies.
In the list of investments and therefore profits of the Gates Foundation, we find industrial giants. Amazon, Apple, Coca-Cola, and again BASF, the German chemical giant in the forefront of GMO seed sales. The Gates Foundation holds over $7 million worth of shares. Amazon's profits? Part of it goes to the Gates Foundation. Coca-Cola's profits? Some of it also goes to the Gates Foundation. Money generated by BASF GMO seed sales? Again, into the Gates Foundation pockets. With Gates, Wall Street wins every time. His decisions on genetic modification become the destiny of an entire continent. This is true for agriculture, but also, more surprisingly, for malaria.
Please join me in welcoming Bill Gates to the stage.
Aujourd'hui, le gouvernement a sérieusement des difficultés pour dire non par rapport à ce que Bill Gates veut faire ici.
Just to have a better viability, be stronger, maybe have a quicker development time.
Ça renforce les doutes qui s'installent maintenant à nous.
In Africa, the former Microsoft boss has found another area in which to promote his plans for GMO. As Gates takes it upon himself to stop viruses and more specifically, mosquitoes.
A disease that kills a child every other minute of every day.
In this field, Bill Gates and his foundation have the power of a state behind them, as shown here in Lyon in October 2019. All the heads of state across the globe come to announce their pledges to fight malaria. And the big star of the charity gala has a front row seat.
And there's an old joke in English, where does an 800-pound gorilla sit? And the answer is anywhere it wants. And Bill is the 800-pound gorilla who the G20 is going to invite into its meetings and give it a seat at the table like he's a country. You know, it's the really dangerous side of philanthrocapitalism, right? That if you have enough money, you get to determine what the right path is for a set of countries as diverse as there are in Africa.
Je veux vraiment remercier Bill Gates et sa fondation parce qu'il est aussi au rendez-vous. Il a été au rendez-vous historiquement et il est au rendez-vous à nos côtés de l'augmentation. Donc, et je conclurai là-dessus, je ne laisserai personne sortir de cette pièce ni quitter Lyon tant que les 14 milliards de dollars ne seront pas obtenus.
Generous donors will be invited to announce their commitment to the Global Fund for the next 3 years.
The European Union will contribute 550 million euros.
£1.4 billion pledge. $840 million.
$930.4 million Canadian dollars.
$1 million américains.
6 millions de dollars américains.
$6 million US dollars.
$1.5 million US dollars. $12 million US dollars.
$1 million américains.
$1 million américains.
We are a few steps away from Bill Gates with 1,000 questions to ask. But in his perfect world, everything is planned, and we are not on today's agenda.
Please join me in welcoming Bill Gates to the stage.
Who else but Bill Gates can surpass Europe in pledges?
Everybody here has really stepped up, a lot of generosity, and although we don't know the exact total yet, there's no doubt that we've made a significant increase. Our foundation is proud to be a part of that with our $700 million commitment.
Who else but Bill Gates can receive a standing ovation from African heads of state?
We were working on a new generation of nets, and we have now today the Interceptor G2 right here, and these are new, but even in the next year, they'll be going out by the millions.
These net figures that Bill Gates is so proud of are signed by BASF, one of the companies that his foundation is a shareholder in.
Our foundation has been working with BASF and MedAccess.
With his power, the Gates Foundation can offer mosquito nets to fight malaria in the most remote villages of Africa, as here in Ivory Coast.
Donc, essayez d'utiliser la moustique imprégnée et bien l'utiliser pour éviter la piqûre des moustiques, qui évitera le paludisme.
Le paludisme, je connais très bien puisque moi-même je l'ai tous les 3 mois. Ici, dans ce village isolé, toute la prévention et la lutte contre la maladie sont faites grâce à des fonds du créateur de Microsoft. Mais il faut aussi dire que discrètement, Bill Gates finance des projets très étranges pour lutter contre les moustiques.
This very strange project is funded with $173 million. If successful, its objective would revolutionize science, to create mosquitoes that don't transmit malaria through the miracle of genetic modification, of course, codename Target Malaria.
En tant qu'alliance globale de chercheurs à but non lucratif, Target Malaria veut aider à sauver des millions de vies de cette menace. Nous nous sommes demandé si nous pouvions faire quelque chose de différent. Nos chercheurs introduisent des gènes dans les œufs de moustiques qui vont affecter la capacité de reproduction.
You won't find this video on Bill Gates' Instagram. He doesn't publicly admit to experimentation. However, in real life, it did happen, right here in West Africa. We land in Burkina Faso, a country under threat from armed jihadist groups. But upon arrival, another threat looms over our investigation. This presidential decree, issued in 2018, strictly limits transparency surrounding GMO projects in the country due to state security and business confidentiality. We leave again for Bobo Dioulasso, the country's second largest city, where on July the 1st, 2019, the government authorized Target Malaria to release its genetically modified mosquitoes. At first on the entire African continent, but Target Malaria didn't film the operation. Government decree or not, we asked the mayor.
Bonjour. Bonjour. Ça va bien? On salue comme ça, Rose. Nous avons été approchés par le projet Target Malaria. Le projet tel que nous l'avons compris consiste à modifier génétiquement les moustiques pour pouvoir rendre stériles les moustiques femelles qui transmettent le paludisme. Seulement, quand on parle de modification génétique n'étant pas scientifique, je ne peux pas savoir à terme est-ce que ces moustiques-là, transformés génétiquement, ne vont pas créer d'autres problèmes.
Est-ce que vous savez qu'il y a eu une opération similaire au Brésil?
Non, je n'ai pas trop bien suivi cet épisode.
The mayor didn't follow what happened in Brazil. However, we did. In September 2019, the leading scientific journal Nature published a report by an independent researcher, Jeffrey Powell. His findings are rather worrying.
I have a project going on in Brazil with people in Rio de Janeiro. And I heard about this program going on in Jacobina where they're doing these releases of Oxytec. So I think, okay, if they're not doing it, maybe we should check to see if it's happening.
What happened is that you and your team, you physically captured genetically modified mosquitoes to see what happened with them, right?
Right. We wanted to check, do any of the genes that were in the release strain now incorporated into the natural population or the target population?
Okay.
And that's what we found.
The genetic modification failed twice. First, it didn't exterminate the targeted mosquitoes, but moreover, these modified mosquitoes reproduced with wild mosquitoes and transmitted the modified gene to them. For Jeffrey Powell, all the mosquitoes in the area could become more robust.
So my question is that they could have been more robust to what? Insects?
Just to have a better viability, be stronger, maybe have a quicker development time. These are all things which you can find when you make hybrids. Sometimes they can develop faster, they become larger, they live longer, they're more fertile. That's what I'm thinking.
Whether the Brazil and Target Malaria projects were funded by the same benefactors or not, the similarity between the projects is undeniable. Will the mosquitoes in Burkina Faso one day mutate too? No one in Burkina had considered this possibility until we showed Jeffrey Powell's study to the mayor of Bobo Dioulasso.
On va appeler les gars de Target. Oui, monsieur Meda?
Oui.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
On the phone, the Target Malaria communication officer.
Est-ce que l'information est fondée sur le Brésil?
C'est de la au Brésil, alors comment ça s'est passé? Nouvelle information, vraiment, je crois qu'on peut se rencontrer.
Parfait, ça marche. Bon, mais il dit que lui ne sait pas comment ça s'est passé. C'est ça qui m'inquiète maintenant parce que si c'est le même projet et que lui qui maîtrise bien le domaine, il n'est pas informé, bon, moi, ça renforce les doutes qui s'installent maintenant à nous parce que la moindre des choses, c'est de suivre. Parce que je n'ai pas envie que la population de Bana soit des cobayes. Ça, je ne suis pas prêt à accepter. Si effectivement c'est le même projet, je crois que c'est révoltant.
A European camera in the offices of the mayor and the people in charge of the program arrive.
Bonjour monsieur.
Bonjour.
Je suis journaliste pour la chaîne Arte. Et on est venu voir un petit peu ce qui se passait sur Target Malaria, voilà.
D'accord, il n'y a pas de souci. Je n'ai pas habilité à parler à la presse.
Vous n'êtes pas habilité à parler à la presse?
Oui, voilà.
Oui, mais là, c'est des questions qui se posent.
C'est des questions, oui.
Sur les moustiques, tout le monde se pose les mêmes questions.
Oui, si, mais bon.
Au Brésil aussi, vous voyez, c'est... Voilà.
En fait, il aimerait bien se rassurer.
D'accord, voilà. Vous voulez discuter entre vous.
We were supposed to film the entire meeting, but we've been asked to leave.
Ça pourrait être très simple, quoi. C'est pas une question, c'est pas du secret d'État, quoi.
Nous, on aime communiquer sur le projet. On l'aime. Même au niveau international, on a des choses qui communiquent sur le projet.
C'est compliqué quand même, hein.
Très bonne journée. Merci.
A few months later, Target Malaria tells us that gene transfer from modified mosquitoes to wild mosquitoes is indeed possible and that it would not pose any risk. We tried to question the National Biosafety Agency, which has authorized Target Malaria to release its GMO mosquitoes. For any answer to the famous presidential decree and its Article 9, our questions infringe on the confidentiality of commercial information and even on public safety. Burkinabe activists denounce a culture of secrecy directly inspired by the methods of the Gates Foundation, which finances the operation.
Ici, c'est l'université Joseph Kizerbo de Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. Et là, c'est l'Institut quand même de développement des sciences et populations. Un remerciement à la Fondation Bill et Melinda Gates qui a soutenu le développement de l'Institut supérieur des sciences de la population. Voici la pancarte. C'est une fondation qui met beaucoup de milliards dans beaucoup de secteurs au niveau de mon pays. Je pense que le gouvernement est compromis à travers tous ces financements-là. Et aujourd'hui, le gouvernement a sérieusement des difficultés pour dire non par rapport à ce que Bill Gates veut faire ici.
From a corporate perspective, from a political economy perspective, the Gates Foundation is once again trying to help Western producers. And people find that problematic when you claim that your goal is improving global equity. This is why a lot of people have concerns with GMO in regions like Africa.
Will Bill Gates, who is not used to answering questions that bother him, answer those from an African activist?
Dear Mr. Gates, my name is Darlene Cassava. I am a young climate activist from Ivory Coast. I think your foundation should not drive our continent exclusively on the GM path. Sincerely yours. Wow.
Hello, Darlene. Thank you for your inquiry. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation invests in innovative tools that have the potential to improve the lives of those in greatest need. We work to support safe, ethical, and transparent research that includes gene editing and other potentially transformative techniques. Thanks again. Media Relations Team, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The potentially revolutionary techniques of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation are protected by their financial power, even in the face of the United Nations. Bill Gates has influence over the UN, as seen here in hundreds of internal emails from the Gates Foundation and the Target Malaria program put online by an American whistleblower. We discover that the Gates Foundation paid $1.6 million for a lobbying agency to influence a group of UN scientists. Its goal, to make these experts accept the mosquito mutation technique. The operation was successful, as seen in this email. The people in charge of the program write that the UN has not decided on the banning of this technique, which is very positive.
La réunion de l'ONU s'est terminée le 17 décembre et n'a pas décidé d'imposer une interdiction du forçage génétique. C'est très positif pour nous.
So no one, not even the UN regulatory agencies, can stop the American giant's experiments. No one can question Bill Gates. What if the modified mosquitoes mutate? What if the transgenic cassava could no longer withstand rain, wind, or sun? What would happen to the African continent? These are crucial questions to ask the United Nations organization.
Hi, are you in charge of talking to the media?
Yeah.
Good. What I actually learned is that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation actually funded this lobbying firm to recruit some panel members. I was just wondering if this decision was influenced or not by this kind of recruitment of scientists.
Well, I mean that's fine if you found the research. I can't comment on that.
Okay.
You know, I don't belong to those foundations.
Okay.
So I can't comment on that. I'm afraid I just can't. It's not my competence.
Yes, of course.
Mr. Gates, once you've seen this film, please know that our Instagram account remains open to all your responses.